My name is Edward Coster, and I am the president of the Chippewa Democratic Club. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to our mayoral candidate night. Our district leaders have invited all major mayoral candidates to participate in tonight's event. Those who have accepted our invitation are Scott Stringer, Ray McGuire, Shaun Donovan, Eric Adams, and Kathryn Garcia. Invitations were also sent out to the Yang campaign, Ms. Wiley, and Ms. Morales, who declined. Tonight, there will be a short opening statement from the president, and then we will go into a series of questions and answers that will be introduced by Mr. John Doyle. Each candidate is to have 2 minutes to answer 4 questions that have been taken from members of our community who are expressing interest in the mayoral campaign. As you know, this is a very important campaign. The city is just about to emerge from a terrible tragedy. And now we have a city where on Wall Street, the prices hit new highs every day. And the people at Westchester Square, where our club is located, when they get off the subway, many of those refrigerators in their homes are empty. So we're going to look to the next mayor to bring extraordinary leadership to the city. So with that, we'd like to have, we're going to turn the meeting over to Mr. John Doyle, our male district leader, and then to our female district leader, Ms. Marjorie Velasquez. Mr. Doyle.
Thank you, Ed. And I want to thank everyone in the club for taking the time to help put this event together. A lot of hours were spent kind of getting the format together and the content and the questions, and in speaking to the different campaigns and making sure everyone's been treated fairly. I particularly want to thank both obviously Ed and Louisa, who's going to be asking the second set of the questions here tonight. We've shared none of the questions with any of the campaigns. All the candidates who come tonight will be asked a series of 4 questions straight across, everyone getting the same questions. From there, we've gotten a number of questions that you've all been kind enough to submit already. And we have factored those in when we have more time for every candidate to get 2 or 3 questions. And then obviously, please use the question and answer function here to ask your questions, and we will try to fit them in if we have enough time. We have, again, in order, Scott Stringer at 7:15, Ray McGuire at 7:30, Shaun Donovan at 7:45. Assemblymember Benedetto will come on at 8 p.m. to give us an update on the budget. And then at 8:15, we will have Eric Adams. And at 8:30, we will round it out with Kathryn Garcia. So with that, I just want to encourage everybody, if this is your first time attending a Chippewa event, to please, obviously we'll have your email now to keep in touch, to come to our functions. We need people always on campaigns. We need people for county committee. We need people for petitioning. So you all really are needed, and we need you. So with that, I'll conclude and I'll turn it over to Marjorie.
Thank you, John, so much. So thank you, everyone, for coming. The little bit of background on Chippewa: we were formed in 1898, and we're still one of the oldest Democratic clubs here in the Bronx and New York City. So, there's a lot of history. So we thank all the candidates for coming out tonight and respecting our hard work and our labor to keep the club so active. And I also want to thank John and Louisa and Ed for setting this up. It is important for folks in the Bronx to know that their voices are going to be heard tonight, and that we stand here firmly to amplify all their voices, and that we are here not just today, but we've been here for quite a while, like we said, and we expect that you find a home with us here at the Chippewa Democratic Club. And with that, I really appreciate your love and support. And here we go to Ed. Thank you so much.
For those people who are interested in joining our club, we're open on Tuesday nights if you'd like to come down and join. Most of our meetings now are being held virtually because of the pandemic. Our monthly meeting is the 4th Wednesday of the month at about 7 p.m. We are looking for people to help out with different campaign activities. We're going to have not only a mayoral race, but we have a race for borough president. We have a race here in the 13th Councilmanic District, of which our district leader, Marjorie Velasquez, is a candidate. We need people to help out with the electioneering, manning the polls, and doing all the necessary work that a campaign has. And we welcome you to stop by and drop in. And most of our activities for the foreseeable future will be via Zoom. But as the days progress, we'll be able to get together again and throw a good-sized party. We like to see everyone come down, express their views. And once again, we've been here for a long time. Our people have been, we're here when the first progressive movement started in 1898. We were here. We were also here, our people who founded this club fought in the Union Army against slavery. We were part of the New Deal. We're part of the Kennedy deal. We've always been part of the deal. So come on down and join us.
And Ed, just to build on something you just said, because I'm just being reminded now, we will be doing this again next month for the borough president's race. And then we will be doing other offices thereafter. And then finally be rounding out with the city council candidates on the Democratic primary lines. There'll be Marjorie and any competitors she may or may not have. So that will be another one we will have later on.
Right. So that those are coming up for the months of April, and May, and June. So there's plenty of time to get involved, and there's plenty of activities to be involved in.
I just want to add, hi everyone, Luisa Benedetto. I'm a board member at Chippewa Democratic Club. I'll be putting in the chat a Google link and we'll bring you to our membership form. So if you do want to become a member, you can always fill it out and send your information to our PO box. So you could check that out in the chat box.
All right, Mr. Doyle.
Yes, sir. We are still waiting. Obviously, we're going to start at 7:15 or as soon as obviously the comptroller, that's his agreed schedule time. When he comes, that's when this will start. Louisa will be actually the first person to interview Comptroller Stringer. And just so everyone knows, we've asked all the candidates to adhere to a 2-minute rule for every question. We figure 2 minutes is broad enough to at least get to some of the subject matter so you guys can understand, can get a better grasp on what's going on. Obviously, all the candidates have websites with very detailed plans, so you can always go to their websites. I see some of the fans of said candidates are commenting in the chat as we speak. That's always very important. And we, again, just want to thank you guys for coming out. This is going to be a very informative process. And, we did take every question that came in before 12 o'clock today has been factored into the questions the candidates are receiving. So we did take all of your questions. Obviously we've reformatted a few of them that were very pointed, but they are not filtered. And we saw a lot of common themes, from transportation related questions to criminal justice and policing related questions to questions about zoning. And then finally, we had a question about climate change and resiliency. So we know those are all issues that, the 82nd district is grappling with, which obviously includes the neighborhoods of Throgs Neck, Country Club, City Island, Pelham Bay, Morris Park, Westchester Square, Zariga, and the sub-communities therein, which are a lot, but Locust Point, Silver Beach, Edgewater, the Waterbury, LaSalle, and Spencer Estates. So all, these issues that we're grappling with at the neighborhood level, have cycled into a lot of these questions. So we anticipate as this takes off that we are going to be doing, getting a lot of those questions in. Again, it's going to be a 2-minute question period. If Louise is asking the questions, you'll probably hear me in the background saying 30 seconds, time's up. So we'll be keeping each other on track that way. That way we can make sure we maximize the amount of questions that you guys submitted that we can get in. And also just, making sure that the questions are as concise as possible. So that way you guys can have a good understanding of local issues as you go to the polls. There were a lot of other local questions that came in. Questions about rent guidelines board. We had some questions about, what people agree with the current mayoral administration on, what they may disagree with the current mayoral administration on. We had questions about helping tenants and small landlords. We had questions about how to improve the city schools and what are the candidates' positions on charter schools. We had a few other questions as well as to, let's see here, questions about union contracts. Obviously, we're a pro-union club. Everyone knows that. We are strong supporters of the labor movement, and what will be the principles and guidelines by which an incoming administration will deal with the numerous different labor unions that are coming in. We also had questions about, water quality, particularly in the Sound. We had questions about Rodman's Neck that were submitted, questions about the condition of Pelham Bay Park and parks equity in general. And we had some questions about support for small business. So we will have all those questions, which we will get to. The questions in the order they've been arranged have actually been kind of delegated by Louisa. So thank you, Louisa. She made sure they're fair to all candidates. And every candidate should be getting 2 questions. So that is the way we formatted it. And again, we're literally waiting a minute or two till the comptroller gets on, and then we will start with the questioning.
This is a good time for people to grab some water, use the restroom, get those things done before this exciting forum we're hosting tonight. Everyone's doing well? Good, good.
I see a question here about captions. We did click yes on the captions in the Zoom chat. So, obviously we try to make every attempt to make this a more accessible thing to anybody despite their, different abilities. And, we will try again to try to get it so there are captions in the Zoom. We don't want anyone to feel they're being ignored. We have tried through the settings. So just so everyone's aware of that. Also, while we wait, just so everyone is aware, we have been reached out to by BronxNet, which obviously does a lot of free public access television shows, and they may be rebroadcasting this forum on their channel in the weeks ahead so that everybody is aware. So we just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of that. So you may end up seeing parts of this or even maybe yourself on television. Right. Welcome, Comptroller Stringer. How are you?
Mr. Doyle, how are you?
Good. Good to see you.
How's it going?
It's another day in the life, right?
Council member, how are you?
Not yet, but thank you. Doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm living the life. Yes.
There we go. Okay, so Louisa, Mr. Stringer, Louisa is going to actually be the one to ask you the questions tonight. So I'll just be there to give a 30-second reminder. And obviously, as we've instructed all the candidates to keep the questions to about 2 minutes, okay?
And how long do I have?
15 minutes.
Okay, we'll do it. Okay, perfect.
Thank you, sir. Louisa, take it.
Hey, sir, how's it going?
How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for asking. Wednesday night, talking to you and other mayoral candidates, not so bad. But thank you for being here tonight. We're super excited that you were able to make the time to come here and speak to all of us. But first off, for 30 seconds or so, you can introduce yourself, though I'm sure you don't need an introduction, but it'll be good to let everybody know.
All right, and we're on right now. This is great.
Yeah, we're on. You're ready.
Well,
You're up.
Hello, Chippewa. It is great to be here. I will be brief, but I wanted to say to all of you that this is a very consequential election we're going to have in June, and I know it's been overshadowed by so much of this terrible pandemic and making sure that we were able to beat Donald Trump. But there is, I think, good things on the horizon. And I think Marjorie Velasquez, as our council member, I think is going to breathe new life and new hope in our city government. And I'm really glad that I spent some time campaigning with her. So thank you. But look, let me be brief. This pandemic has taken a toll. And I will say that before the pandemic, we had a 3.4% unemployment rate. We had added 970,000 jobs to the economy. We had our problems, but we had a backbone. We had good things happening. And once the virus came, the unemployment rate went from 3.4% to 20%. Among communities of color, it was 25%. Among young people, it was 36%. We shut down the entire economy. This was not like it was after 9/11 or the 2008 recession. Even the city's fiscal crisis in the 70s, this was akin to the Great Depression. We saw bread lines and food lines and a lot of challenges. And my own mom, who many of you know, who was a Bronxite, along with my stepfather, who was a former deputy borough president of the Bronx back in the day, Carlos Cuevas. When my mom died for COVID at Montefiore, the doctors there talked very clearly about what was happening. The fact that so many young people, people of color, were dying in their 40s and 50s. And that's because we have managed people's health disparities, not solved them. And we haven't invested in all of our communities. And the Bronx, in so many ways, has been the forgotten borough. And that will change when I'm mayor. And I'm a kid who grew up in Washington Heights. We didn't go downtown. We went to the Bronx. We went to Florida. We hung out downtown.
And I think that's a good segue into our first question, which is, in the first 4 questions are being asked to every candidate who's attending tonight. But the first one is, our region suffers from having some of the longest transit times in the city of New York. Several neighborhoods like Country Club, City Island, and Throgs Neck are classified as transit deserts. Some bus routes, like the BX24 and BX29, do not run 24/7, and express service to Manhattan is extremely limited. While the proposed expansion of the Metro North and NYC Ferry will help some areas, what can you do as our mayor to reduce our commute times? Specifically, will you further expand the NYC Ferry service to our region? And do you support the Tri-Borough line proposal?
So I'm very open to the Tri-Borough line. I do think the future for transportation right now, especially in all corners of the Bronx, lies with our streets. I have every intention of being the bus mayor, the streets mayor. We have a wonderful opportunity to align our subway and bus system with the realities of commuting. We're now a 5-borough economy, but our subway and especially our bus system is not aligned. I think we should pay one fare so that we can use the metro line as opposed and the subway system. We don't have to only build big subway stations at costing billions. We have the solutions sitting in front of us, And I think we have to do that as well. But dedicated busways and buses are the future of moving the commutes. Now, I'm under no illusion. As a kid from Washington Heights, if I was early for school, I took a bus. If I was late for school, I walked, right? Because of the congestion and the traffic. But we now have technology. We now have a new set of transportation systems that I would invest in, because we got to keep people moving. And right now, our frontline workers who mostly live in the Bronx and the outskirts of our city can't have access to the buses that get them to work and home at night. And they're the frontline workers, the people we depend on to feed our families, to deliver groceries, to work in hospitals, our nurses. And it's time that the transportation system followed our economy and the people who are the backbone of the city.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our second question is, each mayoral administration has their own approach to managing the NYPD and enacting policies to maintain low crime rates throughout the city. In addition, over the past year, the NYPD has been a frequent topic of conversation, whether it is about civilian oversight, reform, or their budget. What policies would you implement to ensure low crime rates in the city? And what are your views on NYPD oversight, reform, and their budget?
Look, I feel very strongly that the job of the mayor is to keep people safe, to keep people out of harm's way, and to make sure that we are winning when it comes to rooting out the dangerous crimes that are happening in the city. I'm very concerned that the clearance rate is now 26%, meaning the number of crimes that we're solving are really at an all-time low. I think we have to beef up the homicide divisions. I think we have to put more experienced police officers to work in the communities that do have the crime rate. But then I also think that we have to shift police responsibilities to those serious crimes and keep the police away from the things they shouldn't be doing or they're not trained to do in the first place. We have to build out a new mental health system and a new response to episodic mental health issues, wellness issues, quality of life issues. We shouldn't have police officers dealing with those issues. We should be sending professionals to work on those issues. They're doing this in Eugene, Oregon. It's called the Cahoots program. They had 24,000 911 responses with mental health professionals when there was a 911 call, and only 150 times with a police call. That makes sense to me, and the next mayor should build that out as well. And obviously, we're going to need to shift responsibilities, but that also means we can also shift investments into the programs we know work, which is violence interrupters, mentor programs for kids, summer jobs for kids, and also a paid internship for every child or every young person, so that we keep kids busy in harm's way. That was the difference between the lives of my friends back in the day. People who had things to do and were kept busy stayed out of trouble. People who had mentors stayed out of trouble. But we cannot continue to have young people interact with policing. It becomes over-policing, it becomes stop and frisk, and it is a time and a reckoning that we have to deal with nationally and here in New York.
Thank you, sir. The next one is, a portion of our region is defined by city planning as a lower density growth management areas, also known as LDGMA, which includes special zoning provisions to control parking requirements, yard space, and other protections. Several communities, including Throgs Neck, Country Club, and City Island, have fought for decades to be downzoned. Do you agree or disagree with LDGMA and downzoning? How do you envision the future of zoning and planning for communities with a mix of 1 to 2 family homes and apartment buildings similar to this region of the Bronx?
Look, I believe in community-based planning. I'm a former borough president. I believe in community board reform. I believe in building community boards that reflect the different opinions of neighborhoods. When I was borough president, we worked on zoning issues related to downzoning certain blocks, upzoning certain blocks, but with the community and the local council member. And I think we need to continue that kind of urban planning, that proactive work with communities. I don't believe in the top-down model, my way or the highway. If I'm mayor, I'm gonna sit with Marjorie. She'll tell me what to do, as she always does. And But seriously, I will work to make sure that we have robust community discussion. Look, you want to make sure that communities are not overrun by development. There are places in the Bronx that we need to build affordable housing, but it all comes as part of a community planning process that speaks to the larger issues, but also the local community.
Thank you. And many of the neighborhoods in our district are coastal communities. In the event of a Superstorm Sandy-like event, they will be extraordinarily vulnerable to storm surge. Furthermore, the existential threat of climate change leaves these neighborhoods significantly vulnerable to rising sea levels. As mayor, what will you do to implement resiliency measures for the East Bronx?
Well, I'll tell you what I've already done. There's no one running for mayor who has a better climate record than I do. As controller and manager of a $240 billion pension fund, which is the 4th largest in America and 14th largest in the world, I led the successful divestment, $4 billion from the fossil fuel industry, because we can no longer think that we have a large runway when it comes to climate change. And so you can be sure that I'm going to continue to do that work. It's not just divestment. As controller, I've doubled our investment in the green economy. I believe that our goal should be having a solar panel on every roof and a battery in every basement, because the only way we're going to stop climate change or deal with climate change is to take very real proposals. Another thing I want to do is invest in the green economy. Both in terms of retrofitting our buildings. 73% of emissions comes from our big buildings. We've got to rid ourselves of number 4 oil. And we also have to have a green and blue, a blue bond program, something I've asked our mayor to do, but he wouldn't work with me as controller. I'll work with the next controller to make sure that we have green infrastructure investments so that we can make sure we protect our wetlands and we have resiliency strategies. Right now, City Hall has a resiliency strategy for Wall Street.
30 seconds.
Main Street, not Main Street.
Thank you. And just so we stay within the 15-minute time mark, we're just going to ask one question that was submitted, okay? If that's okay with you.
Sure.
Okay, last one. For years, small businesses have suffered and many have shut their doors even before this pandemic began. One consistent reason is the unfair lease renewal process. Would you support the Small Business Job Survival Act, which has languished in the council for over a decade? The bill would give all commercial tenants the right to a long-term lease renewal, the right to equally negotiate fair lease terms, and the right to an arbitration process if a mutual agreement could not be reached. Beyond a yes or no answer, what other steps as mayor will you take to help small businesses stay in their stores?
Look, we have a small business crisis. We had a small business crisis before the pandemic. My office calculated pre-virus that we had doubled our retail vacancy space from 2007 to 2017. Right now, today, we have 17 million square feet of vacant retail space. So this is a crisis. And the first thing I would do is I would take $1 billion of stimulus money and I would convert that money into grants, direct cash grants to the small business owners of this city. We need to get them jump-started again. Some are hanging by a thread. But if you had a grant from $20,000 to $100,000, you would be able to pay back rent, hire employees, restock the shelves, and get the business going. And it's not free money. This is exactly what stimulus dollars should be used for, which is to create the ability for people to get back on their feet and also have that as a multiplier, because the business would be actually paying people and creating activity. I also think my plan would very much meet the needs of at least 60,000 small businesses. But in terms of the bills before the council, I've said it, I'm open to any solution, working with the new council, working with Marjorie to make sure that we put all of this on the table. It's very, there's a lot of data and unknown that we haven't yet sorted out in terms of what the full impact of the pandemic is going to be on small and commercial space. And I will continue to crunch those numbers and plan accordingly for that. But right now, first and foremost, we need to have a stimulus package. We also need to make sure that we incentivize new businesses into vacant commercial corridors. That is one priority for me. And then let's be honest, we have businesses that are doing really bad. Wall Street made $52 billion in profit. The next mayor can't only think about big business, they must think about the small businesses that make up the heart and soul of New York City.
Thank you, sir. Again, thank you for coming here. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule.
Yeah, you didn't get a head start on any of the questions either because you were the first candidate. So
You know, they use me for that.
oh, thank you very much for your time,
Thanks,
Comptroller.
John.
We
It's good to
appreciate
see everybody. Thanks for inviting all of us. I'll see you soon.
it. Bye, Scott.
Bye, guys.
Mr. McGuire, are you available?
Ray McGuire here and present, sir.
Good to see you again. This time.
Good to see you.
Virtually. So I want to thank you for joining us and thank you and your staff for taking the time to coordinate with us to make this all happen. So I want to give you the same opportunity we gave Comptroller Stringer. So you have a minute to introduce yourself to let our members know what you're all about.
I'm Ray McGuire and I'm running for mayor because I have the talent, the experience, the lived experience, and the professional experience, having managed through crisis to meet the moment. I come to you not having been termed out. I'm not looking for promotion. I haven't served in administration. I'm not a politician. I come to you as a business person who has knocked down doors, made possible opportunities for others, who has a vision for this city that is based on three pillars: economics, the greatest, largest, most inclusive economic comeback in the history of the city; safety and security; and education. I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much for that. And Mr. McGuire, we're going to take it right from the top. We have 4 standard questions we're asking every candidate. And then depending on how much time we have at the end, we'll ask you 2, 3, or perhaps more questions, depending on how many we get in and how much time you have, of course, before our next speaker. So question number 1 is, as you know, because we spoke about it, our region suffers from some of the longest transit times in the city of New York. Several neighborhoods like Country Club, City Island, and Throgs Neck are classified as transit deserts. Some bus routes like the BX24 and the BX29 do not run 24/7. And express bus service to Manhattan is extremely limited. While the proposed expansion of the Metro North and NYC Ferry will help some areas, what can you do as our mayor to help reduce our commute times?
I'm sorry.
Just specifically, will you further expand the NYC Ferry service to our region? And do you support the Tri-Borough line proposal? Thank you.
So the answer is yes, I will further expand. I will alleviate the transit deserts by expanding bus routes and eliminate the need for commuters who spend 2+ hours commuting. We have to expand the select bus service by adding at least up to 20 additional bus routes. I'll establish a dedicated bus lane and actually enforce them in order to get to avoid getting stuck in traffic. We also need to develop a smart bus system that transport clusters of New Yorkers from the low access neighborhoods to the transit hubs. I'll also expand the fair fares programs to eligible New Yorkers living at or below the poverty line, like in NYCHA, student acuity, and veterans. Fares are clear. They provide a crucial part of the transit infrastructure. I will scale out city bikes throughout the boroughs by supporting the $100 million commitment by lift to double cities' bike geographic reach and triple the size from 13 to 40,000 bikes in other boroughs by 2023. We need a master plan for rolling out the bike infrastructure. And we need to ensure that at least 90% of the roads are always in good condition compared to the city's current 70%. And you saw my fix the DAMN holes plan that clearly is instructive for where we are.
Thank you, sir. Question number 2 is, each mayoral administration has their own approach to managing the NYPD and enacting policies to maintain low crime rates throughout the city. In addition, over the past year, the NYPD has been a frequent topic of conversation, whether it's about civilian oversight, reform of their budget. What policies will you implement to ensure low crime rates in the city? What are your views on NYPD oversight, reform, and their budget?
So on the crime rate, we need to intervene immediately. And I would make certain that we have better policing. I'm not for defund. I'm for better policing. And my plan calls for a deputy mayor for public safety, whose role is to manage the day-to-day interaction with NYPD. I would create a chain of chain of command accountability where one or more officers is involved in some kind of aggressive policing. The entire chain gets held responsible. I would create an emergency social services office. And what does that do? 40 to 50% of the calls that go to 911 have to do with mental health issues. That will be a growing crisis that we need to deal with. I would also make sure that the CCRB gets full investigative authority. Rather than take 48 days of view video cam footage, I would give 48 hours. I would also make sure that we return to community policing. I would make sure that we had community PLA, the Police Athletic League, reinstituted. And I would make certain that we address the iron pipeline. That is where the guns get manufactured and how they get into the top 10 precincts in the city. It is often the case that it is easier to get an illegal gun than it is to get a legal tablet. So that's my plan for the NYPD, and I would begin to institute it immediately.
Thank you, sir. A good portion of our region is defined by city planning as a lower density growth management area, also known as LDGMA, which includes special zoning provisions to control parking requirements, yard space, and other protections. Several communities, including Country Club, Throgs Neck, and City Island, have fought for decades to be downzoned. Do you agree or disagree with LDGMA and downzoning? How do you envision the future of zoning and planning for communities with a mix of 1 and 2 family homes and apartment buildings similar to this region of the Bronx?
Listen, I understand that we cannot advance affordable housing projects and other investments in the infrastructure with a top-down approach. My plan is to work with communities, ensure that the community leaders and the community development organizations are leading efforts to build out our neighborhoods. There's a great example there called Bronx Common. I recognize the city needs more housing. My housing plan is going to be issued tomorrow. It's going to develop a comprehensive citywide plan that does not allow opting out. It does allow for the community to be involved in the design of a comprehensive plan for the city, but at its core is community involvement at the table with me as we design the overall plan for the city.
Thank you very much for that. And then our final question from the questions that all the candidates get, and then we have 2 questions for you after, is how many of the neighborhoods in our district are coastal communities? In the event of a Superstorm Sandy-like event, they will be extraordinarily vulnerable to storm surge. Furthermore, the existential threat of climate change leaves these neighborhoods significantly vulnerable to rising sea levels. As mayor, what will you do to implement resiliency measures in the East Bronx?
So I have identified in my greatest economic comeback, greatest, most inclusive economic comeback in the history of the city, my go big, go small, go forward. My go big is dealing directly with infrastructure. And today, part of the day was a good day. The other parts that were less good because of what we saw in Georgia and the letter that we wrote. But today, when the president came out with an additional $2 trillion of allocation of dollars associated with infrastructure, that is in complete alignment with my Go Big strategy. My Go Big strategy is to focus on sewage mains, fractured bridges, deeply affordable housing, climate resiliency for the 100-year flood that comes every 5 years, where communities like yours are deeply impacted and at threat. So I want to make certain that I focus on the sandy impacted neighborhoods, Coney Island, Hunts Point, Lower Manhattan, Red Hook, and the Rockaways. I will assist low-income homeowners in the floodplains who need to retrofit and protect their property. I'll also invest in green energy. South Brooklyn and North Shore Staten Island are key areas. And also look at other plans in other cities like Chicago's recent RFP for a bulk plan to get all city-owned buildings run on renewable energy. Part of my plan that I've identified, Go Big, is focused just on this. So we will get federal support on this. And we also have dollars available in our capital budget to focus on just this.
Thank you very much, Mr. McGuire. And don't forget about us and all those other neighborhoods too.
I included you, I thought.
I think I'm just making sure.
I got you guys, okay? You're in my plan. Long before this happened, you're in my plan.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, it's funny, we're getting a question down the panel with someone reminding us of a particular neighborhood that would probably be eligible. So the first question we have for you is the NYC Rent Guidelines Board determines the yearly rent increases for rent stabilized tenants. Under the Bloomberg administration, tenants saw high yearly rent increases. However, under Mayor de Blasio, the increases have been much more moderate, which has helped families stay in their homes. If mayor, will you leave Mayor de Blasio's public members in place, or will you appoint someone with a similar background mindset?
So we need to do whatever we can as part of my housing plan to keep people in their homes. So whatever it is that allows us to do that, we need to make sure that we do that, because the number of evictions and therefore the number of homelessness that are pending is massive. We can no longer warehouse, nor should we warehouse. So my idea is to make sure, especially in a time when we're at risk, we've lost 600,000+ jobs. We're at risk when it comes to food insecurity and now housing insecurity. We need to do whatever we can by whatever measures to keep people in their homes.
Thank you for that, Mr. McGuire. And then our final question for you is, what are your plans to improve our community's public schools? What is your position on charter schools?
I am for it. Education is how I got here. So I feel as deeply about this as I do anything else. The things that will guide our lives are education and jobs. We need to get educated to get the jobs. And right now the system is failing. It should not be the case that any child in the Bronx, any child anywhere in this city's life is determined by zip code, for one. And two, they don't have the budget to buy crayons. So I have a plan called Cradle to Career. Pre-K is good, but I want to start before pre-K, because as our children are developing their learning, 0 to 4, affordable childcare, care for the parents, care for the caregivers. And I want to guarantee that by the time these kids get to pre-K, they're ready. I want to guarantee that every child in New York City can read by the end of the 3rd grade. Why is that? Because all the educators tell us that between 0 and the end of the 3rd grade, our children are learning to read. After that, they're reading to learn. We've lost too many of our children. We've lost too many who we've not taught how to read. The societal impact is significant. And then I want to guarantee that by the 6th grade, we expose our children to all kinds of opportunities. They can be plumbers, they can be coders, they can be welders, they can be software engineers, they can be painters. And by the 8th grade, each of our children gets a paid summer job to the area of interest, so that by the time they graduate, and I need to increase the graduation rate from its immediately 25% now, which is abhorrent. By the time they graduate, they go to one of 3 things. They go to the career job. They can go into the career job. They go to a 2-year or 4-year college. But this has got to stop at some point. I am outraged at the education our kids are getting exposed to. So I'm for the best district schools, I'm for the best magnet schools, and I'm for the best charter schools. Whatever it does to deliver quality education to our kids, I'm for. It's all about the kids and their education.
Okay, well, Mr. McGuire, thank you for taking the time to come here. And thank you for providing us with your plans. And we appreciate your time. We also appreciate that you appreciated our time, because I don't think you ran over on any of your questions, which is good, because obviously we got to keep these things going.
Made my job easy.
If you can't be on time, be early. Thank you. That's the way I intend to govern. I intend to govern, and I got receipts for having done it for longer than anybody else in the history of corporate world. I'm good with you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ray. We appreciate you. Best of luck on the campaign trail. Okay, we're just waiting for, obviously, Shaun Donovan to get on.
I think he's on, John, if you can make him, well, it says on the
Yep,
attendee.
I'll take care of that right now. No problem. Sorry about that. Donovan, change role to panelist. Okay. Okay, Mr. Donovan, we have upgraded your seating here at Chippewa Candidates Night. Great. And if you unmute yourself, we'll take you from there. And nice to see you again, sir. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being on time. And Louisa is actually, it's good to see you. And Louisa Benedetto is actually going to be the one to ask you the questions tonight.
Hi, Mr. Donovan. How are you today?
I'm doing well. It's great to see you again, Louisa.
You too. Just starting it off, if you can just in a 1 minute introduce yourself.
It's great to be with you all tonight. And I want to be clear that I believe I'm the best candidate for mayor for 3 reasons. I have the deepest experience in crisis, the biggest, boldest ideas for the future of this city that I hope we'll talk about tonight, and the experience at all levels of government to turn those ideas into reality. I'm the grandson and son of immigrants who came to New York and found opportunity, but I became a public servant because I grew up in a different time of crisis. I saw homelessness exploding on our streets. I saw the South Bronx burning, and it lit a fire in me to go to work on behalf of this city that I love. That started a 30-year career on the front lines of housing and homelessness, economic justice, and it taught me what it means to lead through crisis, just like the crisis New York City is going through right now. I was housing commissioner in the wake of 9/11 in this city. I was housing secretary in the midst of the worst housing crisis of our lifetime. Then President Obama asked me to lead this city back after Sandy hit. And he then asked me to lead the $4 trillion federal budget. And just weeks later, Ebola emerged. And I went to work side by side with Dr. Fauci, all of our military leaders, to make sure that an emerging global health threat didn't become a pandemic that cost tens of thousands of New Yorkers their lives. So I'm a unique candidate to be mayor at this moment because I know what it will take to repair and rebuild our city from this crisis, but also to reimagine it as a city that works for everyone. Thank you all for having me.
Thank you. And just to review, we're asking every candidate the same 4 questions. You'll have 2 minutes to respond, and John will let you know when you have 30 seconds left. So we're going to go straight into it. Oh, and then following the 4 questions, we'll ask another 2 that was submitted by our audience. So number 1, our region suffers from having some of the longest transit times in the city of New York. Several neighborhoods like Country Club, City Island, and Throgs Neck are classified as transit deserts. Some bus routes like the BX24 and BX29 do not run 24/7, and express service to Manhattan is extremely limited. While the proposed expansion of the Metro North and NYC Ferry will help some areas, what can you do as our mayor to help reduce our commute times? Specifically, will you further expand the New York City ferry service to our region? And do you support the Tri-Borough line proposal?
So Louisa, how long do you want me to keep to on these answers?
2 minutes, please.
2 minutes. Okay.
I know it's a lot.
So the answer is yes on both your questions. Support Tri-Borough, and I support the expansion of ferry service. And I just want to say, we were having exactly this conversation with John on City Island, visiting with Marge Velasquez this past week as well. So I've been in the district again and again and heard these concerns. The way I would lead on this issue is to reimagine every single neighborhood in New York in what I call a 15-minute neighborhood. What's that? It means that we would invest in every neighborhood so that every New Yorker has within 15 minutes of their front door a great school for their kids, a great job for their family, or transportation that gets you there quickly. And I know that your districts are forgotten too often when it comes to transportation. And so what would I do? I would dramatically expand, in addition to the yeses I gave you on ferry and Tri-Borough, I would dramatically expand bus rapid transit. And we know that we can make buses work much more quickly if we invest. Traffic signaling priority is available only on about 5 lines out of the more than 300 we have around the city. We know that we can create much faster bus service, along with using innovative technology around microtransit. Why shouldn't you be able to call Access-a-Ride or microtransit on your phone, just like you can an Uber or Lyft? Why do we make folks, our seniors, people with disabilities, wait more than 24 hours? So lots more ideas there, but I'll stop there.
Thank you, sir. Each mayoral administration has their own approach to managing the NYPD and enacting policies to maintain low crime rates throughout the city. In addition, over the past year, the NYPD has been a frequent topic of conversation, whether it is about civilian oversight, reform, or their budget. What policies would you implement to ensure low crime rates in the city? And what are your views on NYPD oversight, reform, and their budget?
So, Louisa, we need to do 3 things when it comes to our criminal justice system. We do need reform. I do believe that we need greater accountability and transparency, more training. We need to weed out the bad actors that are in the police force, but we also need to be investing in those officers that are there to do the right thing. I believe that we ought to make sure that we're also reducing what we're asking our police to do right now, whether it's being experts on mental health with the homeless, patrolling the hallways of our schools, or even I was in the Bronx recently looking at one of the open streets we've created under COVID to allow people areas to walk and play. 75% of those open streets are the responsibility of police, where we're asking them to set up barricades, ticket motorists, get into fights with community members, rather than really focusing the police on guns and violent crime, the things that New Yorkers are truly concerned about. And so if we reduce their role in other areas, really focus them on guns and violent crime, we can create both respect and safety. The last thing, though, I would say is we need to reinvest in our communities. I know that we can break the cycle of incarceration if we invest in housing, community-based gang violence and violence interrupter programs, NEON and others that are working. How do I know this? Because I've worked again and again at the city level and at the federal level as part of President Obama's 21st Century Policing Task Force, working with mayors around the country to create both safety and respect. When I was housing commissioner, I took housing resources, gave them to folks coming out of Rikers. 95% of those folks a year later were stably housed, hadn't reoffended, and were getting back to work. I know we can break the cycle of incarceration if we invest in our communities.
Thank you. Number 3, a good portion of our region is defined by city planning as a lower density growth management areas, also known as LDGMA, which includes special zoning provisions to control parking requirements, yard space, and other protections. Several communities, including Throgs Neck Country Club and City Island, have fought for decades to be downzoned. Do you agree or disagree with LDGMA and downzoning? How do you envision the future of zoning and planning for communities with a mix of 1 to 2 family homes and apartment buildings similar to this region of the Bronx?
Well, as someone, Louisa, who has worked for 3 decades on housing issues, that started my career working with a nonprofit in the Bronx to make sure that we rebuilt but also preserved neighborhoods in the Bronx. And as someone who studied architecture and planning and is married to a landscape architect who designs parks and gardens, I fundamentally understand that we have to create neighborhoods that have character, that people want to live in. I live in a historic district myself in Brooklyn, and we must have not a one-size-fits-all planning approach, but an approach that really focuses on planning with communities so that revitalization and planning happens with and for those communities, not to those communities. I do believe in terms of parking, residential requirements and other things are things we ought to be looking at. And I do believe that there are ways, whether it's accessory dwelling units or others, that can allow folks to use the property they have in ways that can bring income, but not to destroy the character of neighborhoods. The other thing I would say, though, Louisa, is I began my career working with groups across the city to create home ownership. We built more than 5,000 Nehemiah homes for folks buying their first home, many of them moving directly out of public housing. I know that home ownership is wealth building and can fundamentally change the lives, not just of a family, but of the next generation, the next generation after that. And I think home ownership is the forgotten part of our housing policy in this city under Mayor de Blasio. And it's something that I would bring back, create down payment assistance programs, make sure that everyone's children can stay in their neighborhoods, buy a home, and build wealth, just like so many folks in the East Bronx have for generations. Thank you.
And many of the neighborhoods in our district are coastal communities. In the event of a Superstorm Sandy-like event, they will be extraordinarily vulnerable to storm surge. Furthermore, the existential threat of climate change leaves these neighborhoods significantly vulnerable to rising sea levels. As mayor, What will you do to implement resiliency measures for the East Bronx?
You know, Louisa, this was a part of the conversation I had with John and others just a few days ago, in fact. And this is also something I've worked on, not just locally, but nationally and even internationally. I've become a leader on how we build our cities, how we design our cities to make them attractive and resilient to climate change. And I know that whether it's City Island and the East Bronx, Pelham Bay Park, Orchard Beach, or areas like Coney Island and the Rockaways that were devastated by Sandy, I know that there are better ways to plan and to invest. And that's why President Obama asked me to lead the entire federal recovery effort for Sandy. And here's what I know. Here's what's different about me from any other candidate. First, we're going to need federal help to do this. This work is expensive and it takes sustained investment, not just from city capital, but also from federal investment as well. With a $3 trillion infrastructure bill that President Biden is proposing, that I worked on for his campaign and helped design, investing in many programs that I helped create as budget director for President Obama, nobody is better positioned to go fight in Washington to help get the East Bronx the resources it deserves. Think about this. You know this. We send $23 billion more each year to Washington than we get back in return. That has to change. And I'm the only candidate who knows where to go find that money and bring it back. But second, we need someone who can understand how to design our communities. We shouldn't be putting in seawalls that cut East Bronx residents off from the water. We should be investing in ways that build with nature and ensure that on every day of the 99 years when a storm isn't hitting, we're actually enhancing the beauty and the accessibility of our waterfronts to ensure that we have multifunctional infrastructure that works for everyone. So it's not just for climate change, it's for every day of our lives that we need to make these investments and improve your communities.
Thank you. And now we're going to transition to two questions that were submitted by the public. So the first one is, the COVID-19 pandemic left many in our community struggling. The eviction moratorium is much needed as it is helping tenants stay in their homes. As the moratorium continues, smaller landlords are finding it difficult to manage bills, such as property taxes. How do you plan to help tenants and small landlords as the city recovers from the pandemic?
So, Louisa, I understand this issue in a way that no other candidate does. My father is an immigrant who came and started a business and built it in this city. I started working 25 years ago in the Bronx for a nonprofit that worked directly with exactly those small buildings and the tenants that you talked about. And I created the program in the wake of the Great Recession as HUD secretary. That's the model for the $50 billion that's been passed by Congress over the last few months to help with rental assistance to keep folks in their homes. Nobody else in this race was asked to testify to Congress last summer about extending the eviction moratorium and investing in rental assistance. Nobody else but me actually knows how to make sure that that money that's now been passed by Congress gets directly and quickly into the hands of residents and small building owners to preserve it. And I am the one who, of all the candidates in the race, can really work with those owners, just as I have through my whole career, and those residents as well, to get them the help we need. We should be clear, we're on the verge of the worst eviction crisis in this city's history if we don't have a mayor who can move quickly, get the help we need from DC, and put it to work for our communities immediately.
Thank you. And the last question is, since 2008, the environmental group Save the Sound gives letter grades to different areas to measure water quality. Every year, our region gets an F. Much of this is attributed to ongoing issues with sewage dumping from the city of Mount Vernon. Are you familiar with this issue, and how would you address this issue as mayor?
I am familiar, and in fact have had conversations just over the last few weeks with some of the folks on this call about these issues. And here's what I would say about it. What it's going to take to solve that issue is someone who not only knows the 5 boroughs, but has reach nationally to be able to get the enforcement help, to bring folks to the table, to get this issue solved. And again, no one else in this race has the deep relationships and ability to bring folks to the table on this. Let me be very specific. Gina McCarthy, who is President Biden's lead on climate, ran EPA under President Obama, is a close personal friend, has endorsed my climate plan for the city, and is sitting at the White House ready to go to work to help New York make sure that we can hold to account those jurisdictions outside the city. So that's first. Second, it's going to take investment and innovative strategies like Staten Island Rising and many other organizations are advocating for, that will invest in alternative solutions to clean the pollution that's already there. How do I know that we can do this? Well, when I led Rebuild by Design, an international competition after Sandy, we partnered with the Billion Oyster Project. We brought innovative solutions to clean water, to replace infrastructure, to do all of the things that need to happen right there in the East Bronx to ensure that we're reversing the damage of past years and ensuring we're investing in ways that are critical.
Thank you very much. We just want to thank you again for coming tonight and spending some time with us here at the Chippewa Club.
Thank you, Louisa. And I do need to give a shout out to Assemblymember Benedetto. We didn't get to talk about my equity bonds proposal tonight, which builds on his work at the state legislature. I want to make sure everyone can build wealth in the city, just as folks in your districts have through home ownership. And my equity bonds proposal would make sure every single child graduates with up to $50,000 in an account after high school to go to college, to buy start a business, or to buy a home. It would be important everywhere, but it'd be particularly important in the East Bronx. So shout out to Assemblymember Benedetto as well.
Thank you, Shaun.
Thank you all. It's great to be with you. A big elbow bump to everyone.
There we go. Just so everyone on the call knows, we had a last-minute cancellation last night of one of the candidates. So as a result, we asked the assembly member to come on to give us a brief update on what's going on with the budget and in Albany, and he graciously accepted. So without further ado, assembly member, take it away.
Hey, John, thank you very much. Hey, and hi, everybody out there in the Zoom universe. Whatever this is, still is strange. After a year, it's still strange. At any rate, I want to do a shout out to Cory Booker, who has the same idea of baby bonds on the national level, and hopefully that'll be a nice team going forward. At any rate, right now things are really popping up here in Albany. There's a lot of things happening fast and furious over the last 24 hours. As you all know, I'm sure, we passed the marijuana legislation yesterday. Let me tell you, it ain't easy. It took a certainly long time to get this bill to the actual floor of the assembly, okay? And when it got there yesterday, it took a long time to pass it. I don't know how long we were talking about it, but it was at least 6 hours and maybe close to 7 hours before the debate on this bill ended. And I'm hard pressed to think of another bill. But we now have, as soon as the governor signs the bill, which of course he says he would, we're going to have legalized recreational marijuana in the state of New York. And of course, we're going to have to set up the mechanism for all of that, be it on the state level and also on the level of the different municipality, making different rules and regulations that might be in, particular to certain zones and areas of the state. but it's here, and a wrong has been righted for so many people, and so many people had to pay the penalty of having this drug classified as being illegal for so long. So we did that all yesterday. It's done, and now we're focusing on the budget. Normally, what would happen on a day like today, I wouldn't have a minute to be talking with you, because we would be in chambers right now, voting on bills and debating bills for the whole budget. Right now, in the budget, the budget is comprised of about 10 or 11 bills. I always forget which. Okay. And they're rather thick in size and rather detailed. Right now, one bill has been put into print, which I suspect we'll start voting on tomorrow. I really don't know. Before any bill hits the floor to be voted on, we discussed that bill in conference in rather detail and are able to ask questions about the bills that we'll be voting on if we have questions. And right now, as we talk, we're having conferences on some of the things we have agreed on, but much has not been agreed on. And until that is done, and these bills are printed, we can't vote on them. So I'm not sure when this is going to happen, but my best guess is we're going to start voting on these bills tomorrow, and maybe into Friday, and possibly over the weekend. I just don't know, but we'll see. What we do know, is at least my section of the budget, which is still education, which is still not completed as yet. We're still having discussions on this, okay? But we have basically come to an agreement on what will be an historic education budget, probably the biggest in my tenure up here. We have come to an agreement for increasing the foundation aid. This is the aid sent from Albany directly to the school districts for educational purposes. We are going to be sending $1.4 billion this year. And we have a commitment to send the same amount next year and the same amount the following year. And that will bring us to fully funding the foundation aid that the CFE case called for years ago. It's historic what we're doing. And this is, by the way, this is money over and above the city is getting from the federal stimulus money. This $5 billion, I think, something like that. The state is getting something like $9.5 billion. And the city is getting about 5 of it from the federal government. Okay. And it's going to be spent over the next 2, 3, maybe 4 years. Okay. We are debating how exactly to tell the municipalities how to spread it out. But we're spending that money, and the city is hopefully going, and my suggestion has been, and I'm sure the city doesn't need my suggestion on how to use this money, because they have assured me that they want to use so much of that money to have after-school programs, summer school programs. Then when the fall begins again, more after-school programs to try to bring the students back up to some reasonable amount of equality for all the time they miss. They've lost so much education. When I was a teacher, again, I taught special education, and it was particularly correct here. We always would finish all the way from A to L in whatever we were teaching. Okay, and the summer would hit, and then we'd come back in September, and we would have to back up a bit and go back to G, and finally go up some more, and finally at the end of October, we'll be back out to L again and be able to progress. It's a natural thing. All students suffer that. They lose a lot. Well, they've lost a lot this whole year. And I know we've had remote learning, and the teachers have done an outstanding job dealing with this. Chancellor Carranza has done a wonderful job getting the schools to open up for partial learning. I mean, it was just wonderful, the job the city has done. But let's not fool ourselves. Our kids lost time. No matter how good the teachers could be, when kids are home, especially if they're home and they're really not being watched over, the education is not going to get where it's supposed to be getting. So at any rate, kids have lost a lot. We hope the city will use all this money coming from Washington in a good way, and in a way that will help and bring our kids back. So we got a great education budget that we're going to be putting out there. Also, on other matters in the budget, I'm very concerned about the Environmental Bond Act. Late this afternoon, I was talking to some of the people, Steve Engelbright, who's in charge of the Environmental Conservation Committee, who just doesn't think that we're going to be able to do this year. Okay, we won't be able to put it in the budget, but maybe it's still not dead. Maybe we can act on it before the year is out. I hope that is the case. Sports betting is still up in the air. We don't know where we're going with that. I suspect if you had to, I'm not a betting guy, but if I was to bet, I would bet that sports betting does make the budget, and we will have mobile sports betting in the state of New York, even with the money we're getting from Washington. We are getting a lot of money. We still need more. There's no doubt about it. And sports betting is one way to bring it in. I don't think, I could be wrong, because there's many people pushing for it. I don't think, though, that we're going to be able to go over the top in franchising casinos to open up. By rights, 3 more casinos are supposed to be opened up in the city of New York, in the state. And a lot of people are calling for something to be done, maybe at Empire City, making that into a full casino rather than a racino, what it is right now. I don't think that's going to carry this time, although a lot of people are pushing it. Okay, and I'm not necessarily against it. I just don't see the mood being able to make this come through. Taxes. There will be quite possibly room for some taxes this year. There's a lot of people who propose a lot of taxes that they want to see. I don't know if they're going to see all the taxes that they want to see, but I got a feeling that somewhere in that budget, we're going to pass some taxes tomorrow or the next day, whenever we get to vote on it. So something will happen in that area. It won't affect any of you. unless some of you on this call are multimillionaires, okay? Because those are the only people that we're going to really hit with this. And that's a review. And I would think my best guess is somewhere around Monday, we'll have a budget, but not an on-time budget, but pretty close to on time. Okay, I now see my daughter on the screen who's kind of telling me by her presence, I should shut up and there might be a question or two. And she's nodding yes, so I'll shut up.
No, you're going to end. So that was a
I
great
am going to
overview. Thank you.
Okay.
Because we have our next mayoral candidate on who waited graciously for you to finish. But thank you for that great overview.
And thank you for the mayoral candidate graciously waiting for me. Goodbye, everybody. I'll see you in the district soon, I hope. Bye-bye and good night.
Mr. Borough President, how are you today?
Quite well, moving around the city. So I apologize for being in the car, but I have a few more stops and I want to make sure I got on.
And we appreciate that. Thank you. My name's Luisa Benedetto. I'm a board member of the Chippewa Democratic Club. Thank you again for being here. We have 4 questions for you. You'll have 2 minutes to respond. And then we have another 2 questions that was submitted by the public. Our friend here, John Doyle, will be the timekeeper, so he'll notify you when you have 30 seconds left. And before we get into the questions, though, if you want to take a minute to introduce yourself, please do so.
Okay, thank you. And I bring my own stop clock also, John. All the candidates know that. First of all, thank you. I am your district. And when you think about it, my career in law enforcement, understanding that prerequisite of prosperity is public safety, understand the needs of being middle-class New Yorkers, that we're watching our city disappear right in front of our eyes. We're seeing homelessness out of control, graffiti returning, crime is shooting up, and people are just not realistic on what we need as the next leader of the city. Others fled, and I led during COVID-19. I have a uninterrupted 35-year commitment of being part of this city. When you wear a bulletproof vest for 22 years and protect New Yorkers, your love affair is different. And I know what this city needs because you know what the city needs, and I am you. The question we should ask all that are running is, where were you during these long, difficult years we've had in the city? So I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, sir. So we're going to start out with the first question that every candidate is getting. Our region suffers from having some of the longest transit times in the city of New York. Several neighborhoods like Country Club, City Island, and Throgs Neck are classified as transit deserts. Some bus routes, like the BX24 and BX29, do not run 24/7, and express service to Manhattan is extremely limited. While the proposed expansion of the Metro North and NYC Ferry will help some areas, what can you do as our mayor to help reduce our commute times? Specifically, will you further expand NYC Ferry service to our region? And do you support the Tri-Borough Line proposal?
First, yes on the ferry, yes on the Tri-Borough Line proposal, and what we have direct control in are our rapid bus services. I'm a MetroCard guy. People stop me on the train and buses all the time and say, wow, the borough president is on the train and bus. Yes, I am. And I know what it is to be in a multi-fare zone. I grew up in South Jamaica, Queens. I took the train and bus not only to Bayside High School, my school, but even when I had to go to a place of employment in Manhattan. We have a Manhattan-centered mindset when it comes down to transportation, and that needs to change. A mayor that understands our transit system, appreciates the transit system, and lived in a community where you had multi-fares and there was a transit desert. Trust me, it took me an hour and a half to 2 hours to commute to my job every day. So I understand exactly what you're calling for. A rapid transit line would ensure that we utilize our buses the correct way. 2 thumbs up to it. That's a way of doing so. And a great ferry system will not only make our commute a great commute, but it is a way to utilize our waterways in a better manner.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, each mayoral administration has their own approach to managing the NYPD and enacting policies to maintain low crime rates throughout the city. In addition, over the past year, the NYPD has been a frequent topic of conversation, whether it is about civilian oversight, reform, or their budget. What policies would you implement to ensure low crime rates in the city? And what are your views on NYPD oversight, reform, and their budget?
Thank you very much. As I indicated, I'm what I vest, a bulletproof vest for 22 years. And let me tell you this, we have eroded the trust between police and communities. I'm going to rebuild that trust. We need the police and the police need us. Streets of New York will be controlled by either the good guys or the bad guys. And I'm not going to surrender my streets to the bad guys. So I don't join my other colleagues that believe we should legalize heroin, legalize crack cocaine, legalize fentanyl. I know what those drugs did to our community, and I'm not going to follow the popular chorus because it sounds right. And I don't believe that we should disband police departments. What I am going to call for all of my agencies is that we must run our agencies efficiently. So what does that look like? I'm telling my police officers, we can't spend $400 million a year on overtime when you're sitting in court waiting to testify, when we could use Zoom or WebEx or some other technology and then resume patrol or get off the overtime clock. We're going to civilianize our department. Too many officers should be protecting the people of the city, yet they're doing clerical assignments. I want my police officers on patrol to do what's right. Let's use our dollars to be more proactive and not reactive to public safety. But we should never do anything that's going to bring us back to the days of 2,000 homicides, a no radio sign in every car, Benzie boxes, and an unsafe city. That is not going to happen. My son won't grow up in a city that I grew up in. This is going to be a safe city, and we're not going backwards. And then let's get gun violence under control. I would reinstitute the anti-crime unit to be an anti-gun unit to deal with this real gun violence.
Thank you, sir. A good portion of our region is defined by city planning as a lower density growth management areas, also known as LDGMA, which includes special zoning provisions to control parking requirements, yard space, and other protections. Several communities, including Throgs Neck, Country Club, and City Island, have fought for decades to be downzoned. Do you agree or disagree with LDGMA and downzoning? How do you envision the future of zoning and planning for communities with a mix of 1 to 2 family homes and apartment buildings similar to this region in the Bronx?
Well, first of all, I believe we have our upzoning wrong in this city. We upzone in poorer communities instead of looking at transit-rich places with access to healthy food choices, places to better environments. That is where we should be upzoning. My idea of upzoning is 42nd Street down to 14th Street, 9th Avenue, over to 10th Avenue, and places like Soho, all of these transit-rich communities. We should not be doing this in areas where you're dealing with transit crises already. It just doesn't make sense. And I believe we underutilize a method called 197A. I'm going to do that. I'm going to communicate with my community boards and tell them, come up with the plan. You sit down together and look at all of the plans of the things we need citywide, and you give us the plan on how to do it the right way with community engagement and community involvement. New Yorkers are smart. New Yorkers are savvy. They understand their communities. Those places like where my mom has a house in South St. Albans, Queens, those are small one-family housing properties. We should not destroy those communities. Like even on Staten Island, you have these small homes. We should not be upzoning to the point that we destroy these small bedroom type communities. I think it's important to be focused on that. And that is how I see my life as the mayor of the city.
Thank you. Many of the neighborhoods in our district are coastal communities. In the event of a Superstorm Sandy-like event, they will be extraordinarily vulnerable to storm surge. Furthermore, the existential threat of climate change leaves these neighborhoods significantly vulnerable to rising sea levels. As mayor, what will you do to implement resiliency measures for the East Bronx?
Thank you. And you're right. Not only that, when you look around Coney Island and you look around other parts of the city, we know, as we heard over and over again, that 100-year storm is going to come more frequently than it did before. We must partner with the Army Corps of Engineers. We must ensure that we start shoring up these waterfronts in a very creative way. There's an amazing project that Two Trees is doing, where they're actually doing part of the development along the waterfront. They are utilizing a sort of a creative swamp way to collect and absorb the water to prevent the flooding. That is how we have to do our design programs in this city around the waterfront. How do we use those things that are in nature to absorb the heavy flows, to ensure that it doesn't go too far inland? And how do we build along the waterfront that development should be with the mindset of also dealing with the storm surges to prevent the flow to go into the inner part of our city? The technology is there. Let's also explore what they're doing in other regions of the globe that have been dealing with water surges and shoreline protection to come up with the best way to shore up our shoreline here. And then I believe we should put in place a multi-billion-dollar capital program that's part of the employment issue, part of the borrowing now. The capital cost is low because of interest rates. And how do we focus on shoring up our shoreline in the process?
Thank you, sir. And now we're going to ask you 2 questions, and these questions were submitted by the public. So the first one, bear with me, it's long. The NYPD shooting and bomb detonation range at Rodman's Neck has been a source of concern for many within our area. The range produces loud gunfire all day long, and the loudspeakers blare to the point where neighbors can clearly hear the morning announcements. Furthermore, One Police Plaza has been less than transparent about releasing lead readings from the range. Every mayor since David Dinkins has pledged to our community that they would address this issue. Mayor de Blasio, to his credit, has started us on a path to soundproof the range. However, the largest and overwhelming amount of the funding, which is $224 million out of the total $276 million, is slated for fiscal year 2023, your potential first budget. As mayor, will you commit to attending a public meeting on the range in your first year in office? And will you also pledge to have the NYPD be more transparent and timely with our information requests?
Yes, great question from the public. And trust me, I know how much NYPD, they are extremely reluctant in being transparent. So my answer to your question is yes, there's going to be a greater level of transparency about lead. Second thing is, let's cover the range. You guys, I have to take my hat off to the neighbors in that community. You bared the brunt for so many years. I was up there. I remember shooting, how loud it was. I used to say to myself when I was looking downrange, letting off my gun, good Lord, I wonder how people feel about hearing this gunshot all the time. And what people don't know is that noise is pollution also. Look at the data on what noise does to your overall health. People who live by airports, people who live by shooting ranges, people who live in places where there's a high level of noise, they actually have real physical issues because of that. And so, yes, let's cover it. It's a capital project, so it's not as though it's coming out of the the operating budget. Interest rates are low. Let's go. Let's cover it. Let's make it indoors. You guys and ladies have done enough. Now it's time for us to do our share. I don't know what the other mayors said, but when you shake my hand that means that's an agreement that's going to be done. And I'm not going to put it in the year when I'm out of office. I'm gonna do it while I'm in office.
Thank you, sir. And then the last question, again from the public. Our small businesses are hurting, and a recent report from the Comptroller's office indicates that only 40% of Bronx employee-based businesses received loans. What steps will you take as mayor to help our small businesses?
A couple of things, and that is despicable. When we looked at the PPP that came from the federal government, it did not target our small businesses. Our large banks looked after their buddies and their partners. No one went to the mom and pop shops. No one went to the mom and pop restaurants. So here's what Eric Adams is going to do. First, I'm going to say to all my city agencies, your goals will be, how do we keep businesses open? Right now, it's too expensive, too bureaucratic, too difficult to keep a business running in this city. We go out of our way to be challenging and difficult. And we're going to stop moving from this independent mindset and silo mindset to a group mindset. So Department of Buildings, I don't want to know how many citations you actually wrote. I want to know how many businesses that you get up and running. You should not be paying $15,000 a year to lease a space in the restaurant, but it takes you a year and a half to get an inspection done. Then we're going to freeze all of the renewal fees and the other fees that are needed to get our businesses a good start. But we're going to do something else. We spent $22.5 billion in procurement. A lot of those procurement dollars for goods and services go outside our city because we look at the lowest cost instead of best value. I'm going to say, let's look at best value. Let's buy our Xerox paper and our pens, our cleaning supplies. Let's buy it from inside our city. We fed 200 million people during COVID-19. Why didn't we go to the restaurants and say, you're going to supply the grab and go meals. You're going to supply the meals to our senior centers. We're going to keep you open. This is what we need to do. Lastly, let my Chamber of Commerce do the back rooms for my business. They're filing documentation, compliance reports. Let them, the bakers should be baking, not worrying about compliance deals. Let's do the right partnership and keep our businesses open so we can be the Empire State again and build empires.
Thank you, sir. We really appreciate it. We know you're busy, so thank you for coming here virtually for the 15 minutes and spending it with us.
Thank you. Notice I had my stopwatch and I wasn't.
You were good. You never needed this. You never needed this. I give you credit.
The other candidates, all they do is talk to themselves.
You were good. So
no. I'm jumping in here, Eric. I stayed in my time. I stayed in my time.
And she waited for this to wrap, so I got to give a lot of credit to Ms. Garcia. Thank you, Mr. Borough President. Best of luck on the trail.
Thank you. Take care.
And thank you for joining us, Ms. Garcia. Commissioner Garcia. Kathryn. There. Thank you, Kathryn, for joining us. We want to thank you for coming. As we've been telling all the candidates, we have 4 questions we're going to start with. They're the same 4 questions that all of the other people went before you were going to ask. And Louisa, who you see on the call right here, she is going to keep time. So you're probably only going to hear from her when she does the 30 seconds and then time is up. So we have 4 questions that are asked to all the mayoral candidates across the board. And then based on the submissions we received from the public, we have 2 additional questions for you. And the nice thing about being the final act here is that if we go over time, we're not butting into anyone else's time. So we're okay here on this one. And we want to thank you for making the time for us on your schedule today.
Oh, no, I'm thrilled to be here. And I was up in the Northeast Bronx a few days ago. I don't think it was a week ago, though I'm losing track of which day of the week I'm in any given place. But
the trail is wild and winding for sure. So we'll give you a quick minute if you'd like to just do a brief introduction about who you are, why you're running, and your agenda. Yeah, the elevator pitch.
Oh no, I have been accountable to the 8.4 million New Yorkers for the last 14 years. And if you didn't know my name, you knew my work. I made sure that you had clean drinking water, that we kept our beaches clean. When I was at sanitation, I picked up your trash, picked up your recyclables, and plowed your snow. And at NYCHA, I led abatement to make sure that we were protecting our children. I have been called on in every crisis. whether or not that was Hurricane Sandy, which I have to say, if the tides had been a little bit different, would have been much more devastating to the Bronx than it ended up being. To make sure that we rebuilt all of our pumping infrastructure, because pumps went out because of flooding. 42 pump stations. I had 48 hours to get them back up and running. And then during COVID, making sure that no one went hungry. And I delivered 130 million meals. And at the height of COVID, when no one could go outside, when people were incredibly sick, we were doing 1 million meals a day. And I'm running for mayor because New York is literally the best damn place in the entire world. And I want our city to be livable and healthier for every family, no matter which borough, no matter which zip code. And I am ready to roll up my sleeves on day one.
30 seconds.
That job done. I have a real vision for how we are going to deliver those services. And I have been there on the front lines making it happen. I know what it takes to make sure that New Yorkers are treated as customers. But, I have a lived experience in New York that is similar to many of yours. And I understand why you love being here and why we need to make sure that it stays the greatest place on earth.
Thank you very much, Kathryn. First question is a question related to transit and transportation. Our region suffers from some of the longest transit times in the city of New York. Several neighborhoods like Country Club, City Island, and Throgs Neck are classified as transit deserts. Some bus routes like the BX24 and the BX29 do not run 24/7, and express bus service to Manhattan is extremely limited. While the proposed expansion of the Metro North and NYC Ferry will help some areas, what can you do as our next mayor to help reduce our commute times? Specifically, will you further expand the NYC Ferry service to our region, and do you support the Tri-Borough Line proposal?
And so the question to that is yes and yes. We need to ensure that people are actually getting out of their cars and using public transit. You can't do that if it takes a long time. New Yorkers are all about time. If you're not getting to school on time, if you're not getting to work on time, they're not going to use it. And using buses is so quick. We can make changes immediately to make sure that we are delivering those services to New Yorkers. And like, I've been in the areas of the Bronx, and I know how far out you are in terms of transit. You're not near the five line. No, you are not. Which would probably make life a lot easier. But New Yorkers are about time. And so I am absolutely deeply committed to both of those.
Thank you very much. Second question, each mayoral administration, obviously you've served for quite some time in the mayoral administration, has their own approach to managing the NYPD and enacting policies to maintain low crime rates throughout the city. In addition, over the past year, the NYPD has been a frequent topic of conversation, whether it is about civilian oversight, reform, or their budget. What policies would you implement to ensure low crime rates in the city? What are your views on NYPD oversight, reform, and their budget?
That is such an important question. I am absolutely committed to the fact that we need to be safe on transit. We need to be safe on our streets. This is a management problem. And I have managed a uniform agency. And we know that you get what you measure. And right now, we are not measuring what we need to measure. What are your interactions with communities? How is that happening? How are you managing discipline? Because we outsource that to the 5 district attorneys, the 2 U.S. attorneys, and the CCRB. We're not talking about you as the commissioner. How are you making sure that your agency is on top of discipline? But in addition to that, we need to ensure that they're over 25. We shouldn't have 21-year-olds be given a gun and a badge to do this going forward. And beyond that, they need to live in the city. I know that is a state requirement, but I think that is incredibly important. But when I was sanitation commissioner, we had incredibly transparent discipline that builds trust with communities. And I know that I am the one who can get that done.
Thank you very much for that answer. The third question is a little complicated, but I know you'll get it because you've been in government a long time. A good portion of our region is defined by city planning as a lower density growth management area, LDGMA, which includes special zoning provisions to control parking requirements, yard space, and other protections. Several communities, including Throgs Neck Country Club and City Island, have fought for decades to be downzoned. Do you agree or disagree with LDGMA and downzoning? And also, second question is, how do you envision the future of zoning and planning for our communities with the mix of 1 and 2 family homes and apartment buildings similar to this region of the Bronx?
So I believe that like zoning, we need to upzone where we have transit rich environments. And being downzoned in areas where there isn't actual real access makes sense. So I believe that we need to make sure that we are putting that resource in the places that make the most sense. But I would also say that I do believe in ensuring that not only is there one family, but that there's 2 family, in part because I do think that multi-generational housing is very important. You don't always want to live with your mother, but you might want to live with her really close by. And I think that gives us a real opportunity, as well as for people who are looking for home ownership, that having a rental is helpful to make it so that you can make the mortgage.
Okay, thank you for that. So our final question of the standard questions, and you've been very good on time. I have to point that out.
Yeah, no, I'm not a good politician. I fail at politicianing. I don't talk for forever.
In this format, I think we all probably appreciate it. So many of the neighborhoods in our district are coastal communities. In the event of a Superstorm Sandy-like event, they will be extraordinarily vulnerable to storm surge. Furthermore, the existential threat of climate change leaves these neighborhoods significantly vulnerable to rising sea levels. As mayor, what will you do to implement resiliency measures in the East Bronx?
Yeah, and this is what I actually started to talk about at the very beginning.
You did, yeah.
Is the fact that literally had Superstorm Sandy hit 12 hours later, it's not the Rockaways or Staten Island that we're talking about. It is the East Bronx. We got hit by Hurricane Floyd in the Bronx incredibly significantly. I mean, nobody remembers this, but there was terrible, terrible flooding. We have to have a plan that works with communities to make sure that we are incorporating both soft infrastructure, by which I mean natural landscapes, as well as hard infrastructure, because it's over 520 miles of coastline in the city of New York. It's not just Lower Manhattan. And these communities need to be protected. And they have not been protected, and it is only happenstance. Literally, it was tides that meant that it wasn't the Bronx and it was the Rockaways.
Yes. Thank you for that. And then we have 2 questions for you. They're on 2 different subject matters. One that you probably actually already know, given your experience. Many residents of our community are union members, and our club is strongly pro-union. As mayor, it would fall to you and your administration to negotiate union contracts. What are your plans and/or principles while negotiating these contracts?
So I've been at the table negotiating union contracts over the last 14 years. It has to be fair, and it has to be something that we can do that is affordable. But I'll also tell you that, like, you know, in times when I've talked to folks who are not within city government or not union people, and they'll say, oh, the pensions, they're too high. I was like, well, look, here's our choice. We can give dignity to work and make sure that people have retirements that they can count on, or we can end up with a tremendous number of poor elderly people that we will also have to take care of. You don't get out of it because you're trying to be cheap now. And we need to make sure that we are really focused on union jobs. I talk about this all the time. Unions have been doing this work for 100+ years. making sure that people could get into the middle class, making sure that they had good benefits, making sure that they had a dignified retirement. We need to make sure that our economic development and our workforce development match, and that we are actually working towards a city where everyone has that.
Thank you. And this is a long last question, but it deals a lot with government accountability, so you'll probably like it. Pelham Bay Park is the largest park in New York City. Yet, despite the admirable work of its staff, the park has many roadways that are in disrepair. Street lamps remain broken for long periods of time, and several roads within that park, like Shore Road, have dangerous flooding conditions. The entryway of our famed Orchard Beach has a standing water pool that blocks half the roadway and that the residents have nicknamed Lake Orchard. How have you been to Pelham Bay Park? First part of the question. And two, what is your plan to fund our park system?
Of course, I've been to Pelham Bay Park. I've lived in New York forever. You know, I do leave Brooklyn. I'm just going to tell you that I have left Brooklyn. I've been up to Orchard Bay and to all of our parks. But I believe that as New York City and as we think about greening, we have to spend 1% of our budget on parks. Shockingly, that's a 50% increase in their operating budget, because we can't just give them land. We have to be able to maintain it. We have to be able to make it useful for people. And in this time of COVID, we have seen parks, our infrastructure. They were where we had our meetings, where we had our yoga, where we met our friends. They operated as our offices. We have to make sure we are invested in those going forward.
It's a good answer. It's a good answer. Okay, since you finished a little above time, we do have some questions here that were given to perhaps another candidate, but we'll just go with them on, for you. I guess one question that has come up a few times is with respect to charter schools. I guess, what is your stance on education? And then what is your opinion on charter schools? Why don't we close out with that question?
Absolutely. And so my feeling is that I want to be completely focused on public schools and making public schools phenomenal. I know my sister's a public school teacher, but my niece goes to a charter school. And I actually believe there are lots of opportunities, particularly in COVID, for us to work together. None of us know what reopening looks like. And there are tons of questions like, I have an autistic kid who won't wear a mask. How are you dealing with that? How can we actually be really working together going forward to support our kids? Because it's going to be incredibly challenging. And I have a niece who's 5, though she will be 6 tomorrow. She's made clear to everyone. And I have gotten online and I've bought Barbies, and I'm trying to actually be the favorite aunt. I'm not sure I will succeed because everyone is doing the same thing. But I also have an 11-year-old niece who's really struggling with Zoom school and not seeing her friends and being with her mom all the time because she's a preteen. She's not supposed to be with her mom all the time. She's supposed to be separating. And so there are literally opportunities where we need to lower the temperature on this argument between charter and public and think about how are we serving all of our kids, because they have all suffered in this time. And so that is where I come out on this issue. I understand that they also are teaching 100,000 of our
30 seconds.
And so we have to make sure that we are supporting all of our kids as we move forward.
Okay. Kathryn, thank you so much for joining us. And you always kept it under time, so we appreciate that too.
I didn't even have to use my timer. I'm just very direct. You know?
Eric Adams had to show us that he was actually timed, but he also kept it in time too.
Oh no, he does. And then he tells us how he's on his timer.
We hope you come back up our way soon, and best of luck to you on the campaign trail.
Thank you so much. I really appreciated being here.
Bye now.
Bye.
Okay, Louise, I think you had one acknowledgement we failed to make earlier on, which I'm going to take responsibility for and apologize for because it wasn't in the notes here. So
I know, and I'll take responsibility as well. But this event. First of all, thank you for coming. We really appreciate it. But it was also co-sponsored with our neighboring political club, Liberty Democratic Association. So thank you, Liberty, for co-sponsoring with us on this event. And I also just want to give a shout out to our board members who are here tonight. Of course, Marjorie Velasquez, our board member and district leader, John Doyle, district leader and board member, Ed Coster, our president, and also on the line is Jeff Lynch and Lynn Coster. So thank you both. Thank you all for joining. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you guys. And when time permits for us to have in-person meetings, we hope to see you all down at the Chippewa Club. Thank you and have a great night.